Now, it almost seems to be mocking you when it speaks to you, this inner critic. It mocks you. Even in the morning when you wake up, for example, and you look in the mirror, let's just say you're not having a good morning. This inner critic will come out and say, gosh, you look so awful, you need to really go to bed earlier again. Stuff like that. It's an inner critic criticizing you negatively all the time. Now, this voice keeps you. It actually stalls you from grabbing opportunities and even trying new things, because when you try something, it will come up and just say, oh, no, bother, you're not going to do it. You're not even going to get it right, so don't try. So it becomes this obstacle for you. And you just constantly then start to second guess yourself. And then you doubt your motives, you doubt what you can do and what you can't do. Um, and before you even start something, this will be the stalling factor for you. And I think the worst sometimes scenario with the inner critic is, even if you achieve something, let's say you do something and you gain some benefit and it's a wonderful achievement, this same inner critic can come back and tell you, well, if it wasn't for so and so, you wouldn't have got it. You know, or it just degrades what you might feel as a positive. So even if you do something correctly, this inner critic of yours will say, well, if it wasn't for so and so, or if it wasn't your luck this time round that it wouldn't have been there. That's what we're trying to get at. And the reason I'm giving these examples in such depth is because all of the listeners, I'm sure right now, can identify with one of them, at least. And every one of us has it. I suppose we have these voices that come up every now and again. And it can become so bad that it will drain you. It will crush your spirit sometimes. But let's understand first one thing. Who is this inner critic? Where does it come from? Now, in my experiences and with reading one-on-ones and studying it a little bit, for me, this inner critic comes from the past, your past. And that critical inner voice that you have is kind of formed out of what's developed over early life experiences, be it painful, be it questionable, be it negative. And because it continues over a time frame, and you either experience it for yourself as a hurtful attitude or you observe this being done continuously around you, it becomes a voice inside you about what you've experienced, and it just remains. And then your subconscious almost like just adopts it. And then when you integrate this pattern of almost destruction, and yes, it is a destructive thought, it becomes too much of an importance to you to make sure others are pleased, to make sure that you doubt yourself so you don't gain more, stuff like that starts to happen. So when you actually not identifying with it, you actually allow it to be more in control of you. Now, here's what we need to do. We need to firstly understand it, and we need to separate it. We need to separate the inner critic from you. And that's where we ask today. How do you do that? How do you actually try to figure out where is this inner critic in me coming from? How do I tell it to be quiet so that I can move on and I can find better things that I don't have to listen to? The question comes in, is there a solution to this inner critic? And the answer is yes. But remember, this is trauma from your childhood. This is stuff that you've, abusive issues, or whether it doesn't have to be that. It could be just you observing other people around you that just resonate inside you and it embeds itself in your subconscious, and this is how you create the critic about life. And these are challenges, obviously, that you need to face. You need to face them to heal them. And the best way to do that is obviously via therapy, empowerment sessions, etc., etc. But let's just say you're not in therapy, and you would like to just try and get rid of this inner critic. And how do you try and deal with it now? How do you do that for you at the moment? If you have it happening with you right now, what can you do to change that? So for me, and I'm using myself now as an example again, because like I say, what I teach is based on what I know, and what I know is because it works. So I'm giving you my example of what I did. One of the first things, again, I'm going to bring this word up of awareness. It's so crucial. It's not just about being empowered, but you need to be aware of things. If you're not aware of this inner critic of yours, and if you're not aware of what it's doing to you, how do you know that you need to change it and to what? So you need to be aware that it's even there. You need to be aware at when it's coming to you. At what stage, at what point. And the first thing for me is you really need to, once you become aware of it, you need to learn how to build a kind of a distance between yourself and this inner critic. So when I talk about that, remember I'm talking about this voice that's telling you these negative thoughts. I'm saying you need to become distant from it. How do you do this? This is a voice inside you that constantly talks back to you and it talks negatively to you. So You need to create a distance from it to realize that you are the one who's experienced those difficulties back then to create these control measures in your subconscious. Even though they're subconscious, but they're there, and they're there for you. This inner critic is about you and your part. So when it comes to control, remember that you can still take control of it. How do you do this? Here's some practical steps, okay? First thing, I also had, I went, you study in college, university sessions, you learn certain practices. And one of the things that I worked for me was to name my inner critic. So I gave my inner critic a name. Mine, I'll share with everybody, I named my inner critic Miss Perfect. Because I always say, well, Miss Perfect, if you think this and you think that, and I do. Because Miss Perfect just always question me and think Miss Perfect is perfect. So my inner critic is called perfect. So as I'm going along today, I'll try and use myself and the analogy there. So I used to call mine Miss Perfect. And on certain things that happen with me, I would write down certain things that she says. And one of the things I found was, for example, grab a piece of paper and write what exactly Miss Perfect is saying to you. What is she saying? She's saying, I'm just useless. This is an example. I'm just useless. If you write this down, I'm just useless. You're writing, I'm just useless. Now, one of the things you can do is go to what you've just written. Change I to you. And read it back to yourself. You just useless. That becomes something separate from you and not you. Number one. That's what you're already doing. So that's the first thing I was taught when it works. So you write these statements down, whatever the critic is telling you, write them all down on a piece of paper. Wherever there's an I, change that I to become a you. So if it's you're never going to get, I never get things with properly, change the I to a you. Once you do that, and you go back to all of your statements that you've written down. Most often your inner critic gives you certain words like, you never do things properly. Like, I'll never get this right. Your inner critic will say, I'm a really bad mother. I always do things that hurt people. So inside these sentences, there are words like always and never, stuff like that. And when you study psychology, those words are what we call absolute words because they're like profound. They give you a time frame of infinity. So one of the things you need to do is when you become aware of what the critic is saying, I'm always a failure. I'm a bad, bad mother. Take away from those statements the I, number one, so you just feel over the I, it's becoming a you, and then you take away the absolute. So you remove, and instead of I always, you're not going to be always in, you're changing it. So if you're saying, for example, your inner critic is hounding you because you forever lose your keys everywhere. I always lose my keys so much away, I just never know how to find them. You need to calm the inner critic and say, you have difficulties because sometimes things go wrong, you're hectic, and you don't know where you left the key. No big deal, we'll find it. So you need to kind of become a friend with your inner critic and change the terminology. But to do that, you need to be more aware of what that terminology is. Now, it sounds like it's cumbersome. It even sounds sometimes like it's not really working. But do this as an exercise. Write these things down and try and do this in the order that I'm giving to you. It does work. I'll give you an example. When I say I want you to distance from the critic, one of the things you do in that distancing is you're trying to convert what's a negative statement. You're reversing it to become something you can understand and that you can take control of. Because remember, the inner critic is trying to stop you from something. The inner critic is trying to give you this negative power over yourself. You, by doing this analysis and this measure that I'm giving you, is overpowering the inner critic and trying to analyze and actually making it change from the negative to positive. So let's just give an example of the inner critic saying something to the effect of, you're too fat. And I can't believe that you even had a piece of cake knowing that you put on that weight. Or you're 2 kilos extra. Let's just say that. Now, we need to neutralize that statement because if the inner critic has to tell you that about you and weight constantly, you're going to always tell yourself negative things about when you eat, negative things about what happens. And if you're somebody who emotionally eats, that obviously is going to compound and going to get worse. When you want to neutralize that statement, You're going to rather think about it, and first you're going to change it to you, and you're going to put yourself in a circumstance to make it reasonable for you, and to change that negative into a positive. So last week, you had a tough week. Last week, you were stressed or you were not well. And last week, yes, I had the extra bit of chocolate cake, but I put on the 2 kilos. Guess what? I'm back to reality and I'm back to my routine from this week. So I'll start again and I'll be fine. So become aware of what this inner critic is doing to you. How is it stressing you? What is it doing to your psyche? What is it doing to you in your demeanor? How is it changing you? Once you can identify what it's doing to you, you can identify how you need to change what you need to change.
Mm-hmm.
So write down the 2 or 3 statements that you have to start with. Change and amend and do the alternative that I'm saying to them. And then you need to always remember you have to stay neutral and you have to stay factual when you're dealing with the critique. The critique that you have is always opinionated. Remember that. And that opinion doesn't stem from a fact. That opinion is literally just an opinion. And the sad reality is the inner critic is yours. It's you who placed the critic there. You're just not aware that you did. Now you become aware that it's there. You're able to deal with it. So remember, the first thing you have to do is neutralize what it's doing. And that's what the changing of the word I into you is doing. You're giving it the distance. You're neutralizing the words. You're taking out the absolute words. Where it is never, you're not going to say that anymore. So you're changing it and you're neutralizing it. You're making it more factual about events. So when you're talking about the lost key, or you're talking about how you put on the 2 skills that are and you bring it into fact about why it happened, how it happened, and how you can change it. So that's what needs to happen if you think you want to change that critique that's inside of you. That's very important. Because remember, the whole idea is the critique is cruel. The inner critic of all of us is cruel. It makes you feel belittled. It degrades your every attempt. It degrades you as a person. What you try to do when you identify with it and you actually change these things like how I've done it, you start to become more kind with yourself. And when you start to become kind with yourself, you see yourself in a more positive light. And then that inner growth that you need to find for you, to grow you and to empower you, becomes easier to deal with. So then whatever negative forces, even if it's the inner critic, comes your way, you're able to learn and decipher, how do I deal with it? How do I grow with it? And what do I need to do to make it better? Because remember, what your inner critic is telling you is, again, just opinion. It's not a hard fact. It can be changed. So it's a perception that is developed by you in your subconscious over a time period. Now, we spoke about how to change perceptions, how to change perspectives. Put all of that in line with the measures I gave you today. That is positive. That's positive, and it can happen. Only because remember what we always teach. I can't control others. I can control me. This inner critic is mine. I can take control of it, and I can change it. So one of the ways to change it is change the negativity that it throws at you into something positive that you can take control of. That's exactly what it's about. So if you have that inner critic that is always telling you you're a bad mother, or I'm a bad mother and I'm a bad wife, ask it. So it's perfect. Hello, am I really? My kids are fine. My kids are happy. My husband's happy. Everything's okay. We're not that bad, really. You bring it into first you're distancing that critic from you. It's the name and it's gone. It's out of you. And the other is you're bringing yourself into reality about that's actually not very true. I'm actually a good mother. I'm a good wife. So you're able to take control of it and you're able to change that negative and positive so that it can help you. Because remember, all of this amounts to one thing, Sister Mehreen, and I'd like to touch on this next week with examples as well. It's all about self-talk. And self-talk is very closely linked to this inequity, but self-talk is crucial because when you're doing this analysis, how you change it into what works for you positively so that your self-talk benefits you first is very, very important. And that's where we are. Because remember, if your self-talk is positive, then automatically your stress levels become better. Even the rate of depression that's around you will decrease. So self-talk, inshallah, I will touch on next week, and that's crucial and linked to how you can manage this critic as well. But today is how we deal with it and how do we silence it. You silence it by taking away that opinion and making it what is fact and what you can turn from negative into positive.
Inshallah, alhamdulillah. And I hope our listeners can take the advice and the tips that you've given and implement it in their lives because we all have the self critic. But
Yes, we do.
we can turn our self-critic to be positive instead of always negative and bringing us down and stopping us from achieving what we should be achieving. Thank you so
Yes,
much for your time, Sister Mehreen.
yes, I thought so much. There is a quote, Sister Mariam, where it says, it's time to stop being your own worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the worst ways of being your own enemy is the self-critic and this way in which we have this voice towards us. So when we stop that, we're able to actually live better and fulfill better goals for ourselves, inshallah.
Yeah, I mean, we should be able to be able to criticize ourselves, but
Yes,
we should not let that control us
yes,
and control
yes,
everything that we do in our lives, such that it's holding us back.
yes. Your criticism of yourself must be so that it has a positive outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So if your goal is to gain something positively for you and the criticism is to grow you for that outcome to be beneficial, then that's what the criticism needs to be for.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have your goal in sight of what exactly am I criticizing myself to grow into, that becomes beneficial, yes. So that criticism is brilliant. That's what we need to have all the time. And that's honesty. And we will talk, inshallah, about that further next week's self-talk as well.
All right, inshallah. Have a wonderful day, Sister Mehreen. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
That was Sister Mehreen Mia Cassimjee for this week's Empowered segment. The topic of discussion, silencing the inner critic. As she mentioned, stay neutral and stay factual, because that inner critic is always opinionated. Don't let this inner critic pull you down. Use that criticism, turn it around, and make it work in your favor. You want that to be a positive criticism and not negative criticism.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
In life you see a lot of highs and lows, build you up then fall like dominoes, make you feel like you are all alone, but still I rise. Why we struggle we may never know, but the plan of God is never wrong. Hold your head up high and just be strong, but still I rise. Holding on but I keep falling back, holding on but I keep falling back. It's driving me crazy. It's driving me crazy. Holding on, but I keep falling back. Holding on, but I keep falling back. It's driving me crazy. It's driving me crazy. But still I rise. But still I